Yes, indeed. CliffCentral.com. Here we are. We're live. It's me, uh, your old friend Pumi Mashiho, and there in her house is Gareth Cliff. No, sorry, I got them all wrong. My genders are all screwed up. That's my fault, not yours. Don't worry. Pums, your screen just froze at a very strange moment. Wonder if it's me or you. Internet things this morning. That's what we're dealing with. CliffCentral.com on a beautiful Thursday morning. We are live. I hope you are alive and well. And there we are, Pums. How's it?
Yeah, something was happening on my side with the data. But anyway.
No, this is a thing. But you've got to be careful. Like, I never thought about this until 2 years ago when we started doing things virtually. If you freeze on your screen and it's going like, it's a bit awkward. It looks a bit weird. So,
although it's also a great way of getting out of the end of a Zoom or Teams meeting, like where people are not finishing. You know how people are not finishing the meeting, and it's just like, yeah, okay. Then you can just be like, and just turn off your screen.
You know, and then what you just brought up inadvertently one of my least favorite things in the whole world. And there are some people who I love dearly who just cannot say goodbye. It's very difficult for them in a meeting. I was in one just a couple of weeks ago, and this dude, he's a nice person, but he just can't finish and say goodbye, you know?
You see, and in a physical meeting, you can like get up and walk towards the door.
This was a physical meeting, and he still didn't get. No. So I like a short meeting, right? And I know, like, you're an expert at this. I'm not. You and Rena, who obviously started Cliff Central with me and has a long and an amazing history in media and radio and everything else. You and she are real experts at this. I mean, you two of you have handled workshops on everything, conflict resolution, appointing the CEO. You guys have been like consultants to the biggest companies in South Africa, and I get that. Like, you're really skilled at that. I'm not, so I have the EQ of I'm at about a quarter of what you and Rena operate at on a daily basis, right? So I'm sitting in this meeting, and this dude that we're talking to, so I get up, I go, okay, thanks guys, that's a great meeting, lovely. Is that
great, fantastic?
Right. Now that sounds like a conclusion. So I get up from my desk because they're sitting at the table in our office, and I walk towards the door. But I'm stopped because the office isn't big. So that table, if you're sitting with your chair quite far back, which he was, then you can't really
walk to the door.
I can't get past him. So I have to stand up and then hover around my desk, right? And then, like, he's carrying on talking, and Rena's like, she talks to him. And I'm like, no, stop talking to him. It's finished now. And the two of them, 5 minutes more. And I'm like, oh.
Gareth, so try leaving a family event with your black mom. The goodbye is like you're all getting up and it's okay, goodbye, and we're done. And then at the door, and then at the car, by the gate, at the car. And then the doors open and she's not in the car. She's still like the doors open and she's standing there and she's still get in the car. And then she's in the car and then the windows open.
Well, then, having put up with this every day for however long you have with your mom, what are the best ways to get out? You must have some tricks and you've already said get up, but I told you in the case of this guy, it didn't work. Normally that would. I sometimes I need to go to the loo, and then I just don't come back until they've gone.
No, so it's your own psychological like makeup. You've got to make it up. You've got to give yourself the psychological buffer, right? So you've got to say, tell everyone, okay, we're leaving in 5 minutes.
Uh-huh.
And then wrap up and pack everything and take the things to the car so that people can see you moving and you're leaving, right? So and then the best one in the office is to say, I've got to get ready for the next one now.
Oh, okay, that's a good idea.
It's like, okay, I've got to get ready for my next meeting.
That's about as blatant as you're going to get, right? I mean, if you say to someone, I've got another meeting, sorry, thank you, I've got to get ready for the next meeting, they can't really argue and stick around.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's a problem. I
All
don't
right.
know
So,
if it's an Africa-wide problem, but I do know it's a South Africa-wide
it's a
problem.
very so first of all, Ruth says here South Africans have seriously long goodbyes, which is true. That's why at a party, I just ninja. Like I'll say goodbye to
Yeah.
the host. I'll always say goodbye to the host or hostess. If they're the person who invited me, I will always say goodbye to them. I'll never just like leave without saying goodbye to them. But everybody else,
Ninja.
you're on your own. If you see me on the way out, that's great. But otherwise, I'm out of there. And I think it's elegant. I know that some people would think it's rude, but I think it's quite elegant to get the hell out of there. If you just you're done. Nobody else really cares whether you stay or leave. They're going to say they care, but really they'll carry on if they want to stay. And if they
Oh
want to stay, if
no.
they want to go, they'll go as
But
well.
it's also a thing. It's also a thing where people are just like, oh, why do you gotta go now? Just stay a
Yeah.
little bit longer.
And especially in South Africa, they're like, one more drink. And you're like, no, I've
One for the
decided
road.
I've had enough. Thank you. So let me ask you this, because you're also the expert in human relations with respect to how you deal with calls. And yesterday I brought up this situation that Telcom keep calling me. So I'm not going to go into the whole story again because everyone who was listening yesterday is going to be bored by the end of the story. But suffice it to say, they have not stopped calling me. And yesterday, after my little tirade in the morning, they called again to try and sell me something. Now I've been really polite up to the last 4 times, and I can't anymore. So this time I just answered it and left it on, which is a suggestion one of our listeners gave me. And they eventually put down the phone and go away. But really, it's like, it's enough, I don't know what to do with these people.
But you have to understand that they too are at work, right?
I
So they're at work, and it's an irritating job that they have. So it's just courteous but short. Thank you. I'm not interested. I'm not in the market. Thank you. Goodbye.
Well, your biggest fan on the show, who only really listens when you're on, is Michael, and he says the Swiss are the worst. You can turn your back and be walking away, and they will still be holding a conversation.
No.
I mean, this is amazing. So try an Afrikaans mother-in-law, says Tracy. The chat in the driveway is almost longer than the Keier itself. It really is a long goodbye. Yeah. You see, this is it's a widely held thing. It's not just black moms in Africa or in South Africa. Where your visitors say goodbye and then they spend 20 minutes speaking at the car. Well, you always, when I'm in a situation like that, I always go, well, these are obviously people who I love to be with and who love to be with me, because you're not trying to get rid of them if you're having a 20-minute conversation at the car. Otherwise, you'd be like, okay, bye, got to go. And then you should almost bank it. You must be like, all right, listen, this is amazing, and I know we've got so much to talk about, but let's save it for the next time.
Let's not make this like the end of it.
Yeah. And sometimes that sounds like you're just getting rid of them, which you are. I mean, especially if you're tired. Like, I don't mind. There's almost nothing in the world that I wouldn't be able to put up with, even if I've had too many drinks, even if I've got other appointments. If someone's important, I'll make accommodation. But if I'm
and
tired,
if the conversation's good, but that's
course.
the other thing is it's like if you haven't caught up, and this has happened to us right in the past year or so. Now that we're kind of seeing each other again, going out again,
right?
We actually do feel like you've missed the being with people, the hanging, the talking. There's so much.
And people have missed social cues that you don't get virtually. Like, body language isn't as apparent in a virtual call. So now we're back together again after like 2 years, really, of, I mean, like in between, I didn't really change my social behavior, but a lot of people did. I know some people who are still totally quarantined, so.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, not people I know well. I know of them.
Those people, this is an excuse. This is how they've always wanted to live. And now they actually have the excuse that allows them. They just, I just don't like people. I just don't want to be out there with you people. And now there's the perfect excuse. It's just like, there's a pandemic.
At the beginning of lockdown, when we were all still excited, it's going to be an exciting 2 weeks of adapting to change and all that stuff. I was like, oh, this is great, because the hermit part of me, which does just want to stay at home, was like, yeah, what an opportunity. And then Very quickly dawned on me this was not optimal. But we have to relearn these social cues of like when a conversation's over, when a meeting's over. Some people have forgotten these rules. Vernon says, I ninja too. Some people take offense and they'll all come up and realize that's how I roll, especially when out at a pub. Oh, yeah, no, look, if you're in a public place, totally different, because there you don't have to offer anyone an excuse. There's no host or hostess unless it's someone's birthday or something. Then you can just get the hell out of there. Carl says, when I go visiting, I get in the car and start up, and then my wife eventually gets moving. This is a big part of it. And it would be remiss of us to not acknowledge that women and men do behave differently when it comes to this stuff. Women are much more normally, this is the stereotype, that they're gregarious and conversational. And once they're in that, it takes them a lot longer to say goodbye. Plus, if they bump into someone they haven't seen yet that night on the way out, they will have a conversation with them. Whereas men are like, hey, sorry, nice to see you. Check you next time. Bye. Generally.
Right. It also depends on the setting, though. I think there are situations where the men are the ones that are not leaving.
Yeah. Well, as you said, after these years of social exclusion and all the rest of it, some people are just hungry for that conversation. So I just think there are certain ways to get out of things that are rude and obviously rude, and then there are other ways that are much more friendly and less kind of offensive to some people. You got to be careful how you do it, I suppose. Nice. All right. Well, we got to talk about something because Pumi and I love an anniversary, especially when something is as old as we are. And this is great. And I know it's just in time for Bakh'abantu to join us, because he's going to call us old. So we may as well revel in it, right? I mean, this is how he started the show with me on Tuesday. He's like, you're so old. Because I was talking to Lebang about something. And he's like, oh, you're so old. Very old. How are you? Hang on, just off those monitors. We can hear ourselves 2 or 3 times in the background. While he's getting in there, here is it. Pumi, tell us, what turns 40 this year?
Thriller! Michael Jackson's Thriller!
There's that album cover. The famous album cover. Look at that. Oh, man. What a great album. I have Thriller in my record collection. We were joking about like old things that you shouldn't keep. But
still one of the world's biggest selling records.
For a long time, it was the biggest selling record. And I think it held that position for almost 25 to 30 years, which has got to be a record of records. You know? Phenomenal. Bakh'abantu, do you even know any songs from Michael Jackson's Thriller? I mean, you'd have to be...
My mom has that exact album. She has it. I've seen it. I grew up with that. So at least I can relate on this one.
Well, let me just remind everybody who doesn't remember the discography here. We're talking about, want to be starting something, got to be starting something, right? The girl is mine. You remember that one? Beat it. The famous Billie Jean, Thriller itself. Oh, what a great album. What an album, right? And then there was some PYT, which has got to be one of the best songs ever. I want to love you, PYT, pretty young thing. What a great song. And tell me why, tell them that it's human nature. You remember that? What a great album.
Listen, y'all. Besides the fact that Michael Jackson is the greatest, the absolute greatest.
Yes.
Michael Jackson also has some of the most fanatic fans in the game.
Yeah.
Well, you remember, I mean, the guy was basically, he paid off a kid that he'd fondled, and these people were still, you know, and I always say, and it used to annoy me where all the social activists on Twitter would be like, because Michael Jackson was a pedophile, you can't listen to his music. Same with R. Kelly and everybody else. You know, they're people who are like purists. And I get that. They're allowed to be like that. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But don't tell me what to do. There is music. Like, you know, when people found out that Freddie Mercury was, found out that Freddie Mercury was gay, like he wasn't ever out there being as gay as the gayest person that's ever lived. People are like, well, I don't know, you know, these like homophobes.
To be fair, though, it was also a time when almost everybody was the behavior of everybody was quite suspicious, quite suspect.
That is true.
Everybody.
I mean, for a long time, people were like, what about that George Michael dude? And what about that David Bowie dude?
David Bowie, I was going to say David Bowie.
Spandex and sequins, like, come on.
Yeah,
was the standard feature? Come.
You know, I thought about this because Rod Stewart, who used to wear like tights and had that hair that looked like a palm tree and like tank tops, and Rod Stewart was bedding every beautiful woman, like one in a row. Like he there was never a gap where he didn't have one or two girlfriends who were the hottest women in the world, and yet people are like, that Rod Stewart, you know. So obviously there was a lot of that going on. But Michael Jackson fans, as you say, Pumi, they were the most fanatic. They are. I'm one of them. But
listen, Kanaho was 2 years old when Michael Jackson passed away in 2009. He was 2. And to this day, like, Michael Jackson songs feature in almost all of the playlists that he puts together. He is like a Michael Jackson fan.
Well,
and when the Michael Jackson estate, isn't it amazing?
No, go ahead. When the
Michael Jackson estate released the cover for the 40th anniversary, the fans are mad. The
fans are always mad.
No, they are not always mad. But this warrants being mad. Gareth put up the cover. For those of you who haven't seen it, please go and look at the cover of Thriller. It's amazing. It's Michael Jackson in a white suit, kind of in that like laid back, with the very iconic font. Iconic font, right?
But old Michael Jackson, because he didn't
Black
look
Michael.
Like Yeah, Black Michael, thank you. Because he didn't look like that. A couple of years later, everything had changed.
Dude, but that font, that Thriller font, is also one of those things that's iconic in your memory when you think about it. When they did the 25-year anniversary, it was a very similar cover. It was, special edition, whatever. They're doing a special 2-disc edition also coming out in November this year. But my God, they have fucked up that cover. So the fans have spent the past 2 days kind of going, look, Michael Jackson, estate. This is what you could have done. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do this? Just don't change the font. It has been hilarious to watch.
Because they also put up this terrible picture of him.
The picture's not flattering at all.
He really looks like a very thin white woman in this picture.
And there are some seriously fantastic images that come out of that album, right? So the Thriller music video was one of the longest, one of the biggest music videos, very expensive at the time of its coming out. Right. And it's just, and there was Billie Jean, the image coming out of that. All of those, they could have used any one of those images, but they chose that naff picture.
But even because people are, they don't have great memories, you could basically have used any picture of Michael Jackson from the mid 80s, in fact, even the early 80s until the late 90s, and people wouldn't have known, because they all kind of in their heads, they just mush it all together. And there's some amazing, iconic Michael Jackson moves, they're him on his toes in those shiny paper.
In the shiny socks.
With the white socks and, with his arm. And that guy could, listen, do yourself a favor. Whenever anybody says to me they don't understand why Michael Jackson's a big deal, people also say that about Elvis sometimes. I have a couple of go-tos. And then I say to them, sit down. And I put on the big screen. When I say the big screen in my house, it's like just bigger than a laptop. I bought my TV 12, 13 years ago. And it has been fine. I hardly use it. So it just sits there. But that's my big screen, right? You sit them down and you say to them, all right, just watch this. And then you play them the first video that he ever did where he moonwalked. And people...
Which was 32 years ago this week, eh?
They lost their minds. They'd never seen anything
like he doing?
Exactly. But it looks like the first, because I've watched this on YouTube, it doesn't look real.
It doesn't.
Because it's also it boggles your brain. Imagine you've never seen a move like this, and then looks like he's walking forward and he's just going backwards. You're like, whoa, Michael.
It is mind blowing. And Bakh'abantu's right, because they didn't have special effects in those days. And it was a live show. And you watch the audience in this amphitheater, in the stadium it wasn't a stadium. It was a theater.
I think it was Soul Train, yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, that was a great show. You know, Pumi, I watch old episodes of Soul Train. I'm the only guy, I think, who's still watching them, maybe you and me. That was such a great show. I talk about it all the time, and then most people look at me like, huh? Soul Train was an institution. Anyway, we distracted ourselves. We'll get back to Soul Train in a second. Bakh'abantu again is like, what are you old people talking about? Anyway, this scene with him doing that moonwalk for the first time ever, I mean, it was seismic. Nothing like that had ever been done live on TV before. And it was live, huh? A lot of the stuff that he did, he took those chances. He risked things. That's how he ended up like hurting himself a couple of times.
Yeah, he got burned.
Well, that was filming the Pepsi commercial, but there were other occasions where he did hurt himself. And you remember that other thing? It wasn't from it was from, I think, the Bad album, where he did that lean forward.
Yes.
Smooth Criminal. Smooth Criminal was the song. Oh my God. I mean, you show people that stuff. And even now with, Marvel movies where the whole world explodes and the superpowers, and they watch that and they're aghast. I love showing people for the first time, if they've never seen that, you show them that and they bow down afterwards. They're like, you know what? I get the whole King of Pop thing. I'm with you.
So you remember when he came out here for the Dangerous tour? Outside the record, because the record company used to have quite a big office in Rosebank. They had that mega golden statue of Michael Jackson.
That was history, not Dangerous. It was history.
Was it history? Yeah. Oh my goodness! Like they are on YouTube. There are moments of Michael Jackson concerts. There was that halftime show that he did where he just stood quiet for 2 minutes and the crowd just went ape. He's just standing there. He can't start. He can't start because the crowd is going insane.
No, yeah. He almost bought. Remember, he almost bought Sun City. he wanted to move into the palace at Sun City. He was such a weird human being. But again, as I say to people sometimes when they're like, "Oh, but he wasn't perfect." Some people have this idea that every human being on earth has to be the role model they create in their heads. The closer you are to crazy, often the closer you are to genius.
It's a fine line between crazy and genius, right?
They live on the same street next door to each other. Yeah, so I just love it. Imagine being so privileged that the baddest problem you have is what font is on a Michael Jackson album. Yarra, get a life, says Congo Chris. But you must understand, for these people, that's the most important thing. EP47 says, I remember sitting in my parents' lounge when Michael Jackson passed. I can't remember if you were still on the radio or not, GC. I was. We did a whole thing that next day.
Dude, Michael Jackson broke the internet that night.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The internet crashed. The entire internet all over the world actually crashed because it couldn't handle the volume of people searching, is Michael Jackson
really?
Well,
also, wasn't there like a story behind like the doctor and wrong pills for heart medication given?
Dr. Conrad Murray. Yeah, and propofol. I mean, I would never have known the word propofol. I'm not a doctor. I still remember. I mean, I was watching that shit on TV like it was important, because it is important to me. I'm a fan. Like, what can I tell you? Anyway, I found out a friend of mine the other day has a tattoo of Michael Jackson's eyes from the Dangerous album cover. And I didn't even know he had that tattoo. I knew he had a tattoo here, but he said to me, "Oh, it's Michael Jackson." I was like, "Wow, that's cool. That's really cool." All right, so we got a couple of things to get to. We've talked about the Michael Jackson album, and there are lots of people here who are also big fans. I mean, first of all, Stone Philosopher says, my dad had the DVD. I used to blast it on a surround sound system. Thriller, Black or White, they don't really care about us. I was blown away as a kid. Yeah. And his messaging was interesting, right? Yeah. I mean, a lot of it was like just little love songs, which kind of came out of that Jackson 5, Motown
vibe,
which everybody could access, because who hasn't been in love, etc., etc. Then there was, he became very much about kind of spreading the love and making people live in harmony and all that shit, which is always a good message. And who can argue with that? And then later on, he even started getting into like environmental issues with Earth Song and history, which was kind of his little thing to himself. You know, there was a lot of stuff there that was actually quite powerful. Old Michael Jackson. So it was amazing how he evolved too. All right. We got to get to some headlines. Do you guys mind?
Yes, I
do. If we must.
All right. Well, first things first, the Daily Maverick reports this morning that Tshwane's stadium that never was is going to have to be demolished. So it cost them 100. Yeah, I'm going to show you a picture of this place now. It's in Outrageville, huh?
Yeah.
So I've driven past this stadium before. It cost 140 million rand to build, and it's going to cost 84 million rand to demolish. Do you want to see what it looks like? Because this, if you don't see it, if you're not on the YouTube, we'll try and describe it to you. But I mean, how did this cost 140 million rand? It's the worst looking stadium. They don't even have seats. It's basically concrete, a little bit of very, very rusted metal. There are plants growing all over the stadium itself. I mean, this hasn't been used in, 10 years?
It's never been used.
It's never been used.
11 years. 11. So there was a stadium there before, right? They just upgraded it, kind of leading up to the World Cup, which is what cost all of those millions and millions. And we know how much of a mess that was, with all sorts of price fixing, all sorts of anti-competitive behavior with all of the engineers and the builders and the construction. We've heard the story before, but that is a very sad. What's really sad though about that particular stadium, and it's like that in a lot of townships, is that there are actually lots of school children who don't have facilities for school sports, and that's what that could have been used for.
Yep. Well, precisely. I mean, they're busy talking about it now in the Tshwane Council, and it was rebuilt in 2011, then left to become a white elephant. It failed to meet occupational health and safety regulations. The venue had been refurbished as a training ground for teams in the 2010 Soccer World Cup. After the tournament, it was meant to be used by Premier Soccer League sides Mamelodi Sundowns for its home matches. In the end, it was never used due to the horrible workmanship. And according to the DA councillor now, who's in charge of this, DA councillor Chabalala, says the only visible sign that the HM Piche Stadium ever existed is a crumbling cement grandstand. Bricks, iron, wood, seats, lights, even the goalposts have been stolen. The goalposts, everybody. So yet another example of, wasted money. What do we not need in this country in terms of our list of needs that we couldn't solve with 140 million rand? And remember, that's in 2010, 2011 money. So by now, that's a lot more. And it's going to cost us almost the same to demolish it.
Yep.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I also wonder how much of this is inflated. Anything with government, they just round up to the nearest zero. So
nearest million?
Nearest million, yeah. And usually it's like, well, which people should we give this to? Who should we be backhanding and glad handing and kind of, what do we call it, a yengeni from that first Mercedes that we know about. It's just terrible. I mean, as EP47 says, school children don't have facilities for school sports, but you've seen the size of that Boer's farmhouse garden. Well, I think you're talking about what Babylon's touring. That's his money, though. The difference is that stadium is all of our money. Even if you paid VAT on a loaf of bread, some tiny of you has wasted your own input and your valuable money. It's crazy. It's really, really bad. And people are going to be outraged, but only for a little while, because you know how short our attention spans are. That's the unfortunate part of this.
Yay! For the very, very, very short memories here in this country.
That's absolutely right. Meanwhile, in weak beta male news, that's the only way I can really put this. Prince Harry, who I'm sure everybody can't wait to hear from, because Prince Harry, such a sad man. I mean, such a sad life. Just poor, poor, poor Prince Harry. He is deeply hurt. Do you want to know why he's hurt this time? By social media. in an angry protest that's been leveled at him, he spoke about harmful content on social media that's directed towards kids. Remember, we brought this up, I think, on Tuesday. In a webinar with Five Rights Foundation's Global Child Online Safety Toolkit, believe it or not, that's a thing, he confessed that he deeply worries about protecting his kids. And the expert added that he could be seen pressing his lips together tightly, which showed worry for his children. So people are reading into this, as they always do with the royals, like there's some kind of special species of human that don't have normal emotions. But this guy, like his kids have got, you know, they don't have the same amount of suffering waiting for them as the rest of the world's children. Who are we trying to kid? These are probably going to be the most privileged children in the world. They got a bit of Hollywood and a bit of royalty, which are the two elite classes in the world that have never been challenged. Politicians come and go. You could be rich or poor, but if you're a celebrity or you're royal, you don't really have to do anything. You can't screw that up. How do you screw that up?
You know, when you started the story about the royals, I thought you were going to talk about how everyone was kind of waiting for the announcement from the palace that the Queen has passed, especially after we watched kind of Harry's dad opening Parliament in that gold chair, that ornate gold chair, and kind of thought, "Ooh, this is it."
Well,
this
apparently,
is the end. And then she just shows up smiling at Paddington Station. How British can British be?
Yeah.
But I've also heard speculation. Apparently, she's going to abdicate her throne.
It's okay. It's been 70 years.
Yeah, but don't forget, not for her. That whole abdication thing upset her parents so much. It ruined her childhood. She's very touchy about that. There's no way she'll abdicate. That's like
that's
like
why
saying,
she won't even give it to Charles.
No, she won't.
But Charles is never going to get it. I think Charles is going to die before his mom.
Listen, she's 96. I just want to, for a second, I just say again, this woman, I know everybody looks at her and they see the jewels and the extravagance and the kind of the ceremonies and the bowing down and the scraping. This woman is quite extraordinary. 96 years old. I don't know a lot of 96-year-olds who are still working. And that's her job. She pitches up at Paddington. The only reason she didn't do the opening of Parliament apparently is because she was having trouble moving. You know, the old legs.
She wasn't feeling well.
But let me tell you, and also you got to carry that big heavy crown on your head and, you know, trail that long cloak behind you. I can understand that. At least at Paddington, she could just wear a hat and a coat. But, you know, 96, we spoke about David Attenborough's birthday this week. He just turned 96 as well. There are a couple of people who they just don't stop. I mean, Attenborough was still recording stuff last year. That's amazing. Yeah. At 96, you won't find me doing anything like that. I'm going to be hiding
Quincy
away.
Jones still shows
Absolutely.
up. Still has the studio. I mean, what? Do you know who Quincy Jones is, Bakh'abantu?
I do. This is for me.
Okay,
I do.
No, I'm just checking.
He's not an idiot. He's just an ageist.
Thank you, Gareth.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm forever astounded at inability of someone in the age of information like we live. The inability of some of these youngsters to just Google, just use your Google search, right? A couple of weeks ago.
Too busy on Twitter and looking for porn. That's what they're doing.
Listen, my two biggest kind of mind-blowing experiences. You remember a couple of years ago, we loved the song, Gareth, with Paul McCartney and Kanye West. And how, like, all these Kanye West fans just blowing up the internet with, who's this Paul McCartney guy? He's about to blow up. Yeah. Kanye West just had him on this, and it's just like...
And it's 4 5 seconds from Wild Dance. That one, right? With Rihanna and Kanye and Paul McCartney.
They thought Kanye was giving the rub to.
They thought Kanye was like,
showcasing this old man.
Wow, this is mind blowing. And then 2 weeks ago, when Dr. Strange came out,
old woman, because Paul McCartney looks like an old woman.
He's got that Fiki Lambalula going for him.
Yes.
Like Jamie Lee Curtis got the same treatment from the internet, you know, because she's got, when Doctor Strange came out, she was trolling Doctor Strange because they've got that film, which is also about the multiverse. And people were just like, who the hell is this Jamie Lee Curtis? It's just like,
yeah, there's willful ignorance. Like, as you say, Pumi, we've got Google, we've got the internet. There's so many ways that you can find out information now, and yet some people choose to remain ignorant, which is crazy because it's not like your brain has a limited capacity of how much it can take in. You can learn new things every day, and you should. Otherwise, you are going backward. And there's nothing wrong with just doing a Google search on something other than yourself.
Just a little Google search. Just a little, who is this person?
Right. That's all we ask. Just pay attention to something other than you on the internet. Well, here's something in the news that's worth looking at. 2 ministers of communications and digital technologies and their deputies have spent a whopping 5 million rand on accommodation in just the last 3 years. And remember, these 3 years hasn't been a huge amount of travel, but here they are. The great Nchaveni, who used to be, she was in the presidency for a while. That's right. So she's now doing, what is it? What's her portfolio now? Let me just see here. Oh, Khumbudzo Nchaveni is the current minister of, my God, hang on. This is complicated to figure out because there's so many ministers. So we know, okay, they were reshuffled by Cyril in August last year. She's the communications minister now.
But didn't she took the portfolio that was Jackson Mthembu's portfolio when he passed?
Well, because he was in the presidency.
Yes, because and then he passed away, and then so she took that over.
And now I think she's Minister of Communications. Or is that Stella Ndabeni Abrams? Because she's the other one who spent the money. I think it's Stella.
Stella Ndabeni. Stella Ndabeni Abrams is definitely communications.
Right. Okay, so
she's the one that thinks it's enough to have a jacket that says 4IR.
That's correct.
Parliament.
That's the one. That's right. Okay, so these two and their deputies, ministers and deputy ministers. We're not talking directors general and a whole department. Just the 4 of them, 5 million rand in the last 3 years in accommodation
during a lockdown.
So someone could just say to them, well, if you divide 5 million by 4, you could have enough to build a nice enough house for each of these people, and they wouldn't have to stay in hotels the whole time. But also,
and not like they don't stay in nice houses.
Oh no,
2
exactly.
of those nice houses are also government issued houses.
Correct, which we all pay for. But don't worry, when we're paying for that, why shouldn't we also pay for the rest? So use a hotel as much as you want. Great. It must be nice to spend other people's money.
I don't know if you saw this, Gareth. Like the president invoked this thing, but ministers should pay now for their accommodation, and it was like 1,200. I'm like, yeah, because you guys earn millions, and 1,200 that's their contribution towards the accommodation. So it's not, they're not staying for free. They're paying 1.2 towards whatever accommodation they're getting.
Wow, a whole 1.2. Sure, I don't know how they're going to manage that. That's.
Do you know that at number 10, Downing, when they send food, so they will pay for young Boris's lunch when he's downstairs at the office, because he lives upstairs. But when he is upstairs and asks the kitchen to make him something, it gets deducted from his salary.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic.
So and so does the White House, by the way. So there is an allocation at the White House that comes from the president's salary for him and his family's upkeep.
Now, why don't we have that? That would make sense.
We should have that.
It's not like Cyril isn't already a billionaire.
But we care for our leaders. Our leaders care for us, and we care for them in return.
I can taste the sarcasm from you.
But it is also a hangover of kind of the colonial past, right? Because that's what happened when governments were set up in the colonies because of the pain of being so far away from the motherland.
Oh yeah,
they had to compensate.
We covered
for
everything
all of that, and so this is just continued over the years.
I can tell you, there's family experience for me of this because it's now almost 300 years ago. My ancestor was a guy called Charles Somerset. He was governor of the Cape. Remember him? Mm. Not a particularly great guy, if I say so myself. I mean, he came out here as the youngest son of a British duke, and they set him up in the Cape. And as Pumi says, not only did they pay for his meals, They built him accommodation. It's actually called Tuinhuis, and it's where Cyril officially lives in Cape Town when he's down there. Officially, his home is right in the middle of Cape Town. You know those gardens where they call the suburb gardens? Those were his gardens. So who do you think paid for that? The British taxpayer. And maybe a few South Africans. Certainly the South Africans worked in that garden. You can guarantee it. And this is exactly right. Pumi's exactly spot on. We shouldn't
just a hangover from the past.
So we must get rid of it. It seems that the Brits themselves managed to figure it out. So now we must figure it out too. Like if Cyril orders from Uber Eats, it shouldn't be on our tab.
Do you remember that year? Who was it? One of the newspapers about the amount spent on takeout in Parliament. Do you remember that year a couple of years ago? There was a whole thing about the amount of money that was spent on takeout.
Right.
Like things exactly Kentucky. Like it was mind-boggling.
It's always KFC. It's
but just for me it was when the Northwest MEC offers when it came out that they were paying for people's DSTV subscriptions. I'm like, I know DSTV is bad, but like it's in the budget. They declared this. This is not like someone who went through and found these funds. No, like the guy's just like, I just put my DSTV on the government, basically.
So, but you know, in our business, and Gareth will also because it's in at the Cliff Central business, it's also like it's a line item. Your subscriptions is a line item. You need the newspapers and access to News 24 and to have DSTV playing in the background. So
but this is for their personal
ENCA's coverage.
Yeah.
ENCA's coverage of like
politicians,
the latest thing called Zuma.
As a politician, you could probably claim from SARS for that because you need to know what's going on in the news. But the fact that they claim from us and then they probably claim from SARS is what grinds. So, I mean, Carl says he thinks we're being ridiculous. He says, you guys are having a laugh. Our leaders are stealing PPE money and now you want them to pay for lunch. Fucking hilarious. Yeah, I'm afraid so. But we can dream. I mean, we can dream. All right, so Bakh'abantu wants to bring up this Amber Heard, Johnny Depp, the latest in that trial, and I don't want us to run out of time before we get that in here. So apparently there was a star witness yesterday who was quite hilarious. We've seen a lot of interesting witnesses here, psychiatrists and psychologists, and Amber Heard's been putting on the performance of her life, and we've seen what a bad actress she is. But apparently the whole story was stolen by a doorman.
No, this is actually a while back because Amber Heard's been testifying this week and it's been a shit show. Can I say that? Yeah, it's been a shit show.
Yeah. I just didn't realize that this guy was on because I haven't watched it live. So he was on
I think this is like a week ago. This guy is testifying, Gareth, also over Zoom. He's this dude. He just looks like he just woke up. He's wearing a white shirt. He did his best to dress up, wearing a white shirt and a loose tie. And then they're asking him questions. And then he starts vaping. Big clouds of smoke in his car. Yeah, he starts vaping. Johnny Depp is like legit dying here. And then the question that hit me was when they asked, do you remember what happened on this date and this date? He's like, hey, dude, I don't even remember what I had for breakfast. What do you expect me to remember?
So he was very entertaining. Oh, man.
He's answering totally. I'm like, they could have got this guy to come in and maybe prepped him or something. Anyway, what killed me, after he's done vaping, he puts his vape down and he starts driving while he's answering questions. He starts seeing traffic behind him. He's indicating, you hear his indicators. I'm like, this trial cannot get any better than this, until we saw Amber Heard get up on the stand and she got all her facts wrong.
Oh, really? So she's ruined herself here. She's going to lose.
She was so apparently, right, when she divorced, what's this guy? Johnny Depp. Wow, I can't believe I forgot the guy. Johnny Depp. She got 7 million. And she was like, I'm not in it for the money. I just want what's due to me. I'm going to donate it to 2 charities, a children's hospital, and I forgot what else. But yeah, she was going to donate the 7 million. So she pledged this money. This is her words. I pledged this money. So now they brought in those guys. They're like, oh no, we never got money from Amber Heard. The closest we got to that 7 million was Elon Musk donating 500,000. So now they're asking Amber on stage. I mean, on the stand, what did you do with the money? She's like, no, I pledged it. That is different to donating it. I pledged that money. And then the Johnny Depp's lawyer is like, what's the difference between pledge and she's like, no, I use them interchangeably. Pledge and donate is the same thing. She's like, yeah, then why didn't you give away the money? Did you want to keep the money? And she's just stumbling over her words. She's like, no, she doesn't recall. It was bad. It was really bad. It was a bad look for her.
Well, to be caught out like that that's really embarrassing.
Because they also had the guys from the charities just reading the balance sheet, say like, oh, we got this money and it was donated by Elon Musk, but he said he was doing it for Amber Heard. She's like, no, that money was by Elon in my name, but not as part of the pledge. Did you donate the money in the pledge? No. But
I mean, doesn't that make Elon look good? Because it shows you, like, he didn't talk about it. He didn't say he'd given all this money to a charity. And Elon's probably doing that with like 100 charities.
The thing for me about this whole trial is also how amazing it is that, like, did her lawyers not say to her, this is a bad idea, dude. Let's not do this.
I know.
Or is she a terrible client? Because lawyers are creatures of instruction, right? So they can only advise you, but they have to take instruction from you.
No, I think she's a terrible client.
Did no one have this conversation that says, this ain't going to end well. This is going to be bad. It's going to be bad for all of us.
Like, she was seen talking to her lawyer during the recess, and then she came back and then she corrected a bunch of stuff that she said. So clearly the lawyer was like, hey, dude, you're messing up. And then she's like, she even got this date like a year apart. She's like, oh no, this picture was taken this, then a year later. Then people were like, but this picture was the same day from what you said before.
Also, and then she also not Johnny Cochrane, hey?
No. But the one thing the lawyer got right, she changed all her statements on the stand to it feels like it happened to me. It feels like this, not to Johnny Depp hit me. It felt like he was a monster. It's not like Johnny Depp was a monster now. She's no longer.
Except now the doubt has been sown in the minds of the jury. So. Yeah.
Congo Chris said, did you see Amber's friend was banned from court for texting her legal team during questioning? She's an Australian journalist called Eva something. She even had to pretend to be part of the legal team. So that's interesting.
Say what?
Yeah. And Kim Jong-un says quite rightly, Amber Heard is drinking so much water on that stand for lubricating her lies. And that's the truth. Yeah, absolutely. The lies. Moonchild says that trial is the soap opera of the century. These people are on another level. See, I didn't realize, and I apologized on the show, 3 weeks ago, because I only then started to see how much value and entertainment there was in this trial. I wish I'd paid attention from earlier. I mean, I'm still getting the updates, but I'm not watching it live. There's too much going on there. Eva Barlow is apparently the journalist's name.
Hey guys, it is unbelievable how fascinating it is to watch this, and also because, right? So we're so used to seeing courtroom drama or American courtroom drama, but to watch this play out in real life, first of all, it's nothing like Suits.
No.
Right. But it's still quite a lot of drama. It's still. It's not like, and we've watched a fair amount of South African courtroom reality in the past couple of years as well.
Yeah.
From when we watched
Pistorius and
Oscar Pistorius with his poor little ting ting, and every time we watch Jacob Zuma's non-appearance or non-performance, we watch Dalim Pofu.
Yeah,
and it's
in your case. In your case, you've also watched the State Capture Commission, which I commend you.
The Days of Zondo.
Yeah, Days of Zondo. So I mean, listen, there's a lot of entertainment if you want to do this, but it does show you law is not so easy and not so glamorous. A lot of it is really just drudging, and people are giving huge props to Johnny Depp's lawyer. They're saying he's doing an amazing job, but I got to say, like, Johnny Depp has come out of this looking like such a nice guy. By no means is he, a perfect specimen, and we know that he's not a great human being on the measure of like being perfect. Nobody is, but he does come out of this looking a lot more kind and gentle and considerate, if a little bit wacky. whereas she comes across as a proper chocolate fireplace. There's no I don't think anyone, even if you watch just a little bit, like this woman is so dishonest and manipulative, and she's just, I don't think she'll ever get work again after this. She better
There's
be
a petition.
saving that $7 million that she got from the divorce, because she's going to need it.
There's a petition with 4 million signatures to get her off, like what, Aquaman. 4 million signatures. And apparently Warner Brothers did take it in consideration, because they cut her role to like 10 minutes or so.
Well, you think about it.
Yo,
4 million
they can do
signatures,
it.
4 million tickets they won't be getting. You know,
Listen, they could do it. After we watched the deepfake video of Kendrick Lamar, and a very young Mark Hamill showing up at the last episode of The Mandalorian.
That's right.
They can totally just blur her out, or just replace the face with somebody else. They could do it.
There's so much hatred. I mean, look, there's a lot of funny stuff on the internet about Amber Heard, which I love. The hatred, though, I kind of wonder, because she's not a great human being, but she doesn't, her behavior and her personality aren't going to affect any of us. But there's some people that are like, they personally involved in this, you know? Very odd. And then people are also talking about this, which G-Star refers to here. There are rumors that Johnny and his lawyer are seeing each other. Did you see the hug? As she opens his pencil case for him, she pours him water. There's a very like tender thing going on there, right?
But are we also just watching how much, because Johnny Depp was a bad boy, you know, when he was younger. This is also the evolution, like the growing up of the man, right? Sure, he's a little like eccentric now, but it is also, he is much older. And so the kind of person that he is, it makes sense, right? When he was 20 years old, but now, you know, he's an older guy. And so he's acting appropriately weird. He was a young, crazy person. Weird. Now he's just
he's a weird
appropriately weird older person.
He's eccentric, says Pumi, not weird, eccentric.
Yeah, man, call it what it is. Call it what it is. Words are powerful.
But I mean, what do you expect them not to be eccentric with those careers, with the millions of hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank, and these extraordinary lifestyles? I mean, the people that they've met, the places they've been, the things they've done. There's just, most of us will never experience a fraction of that, and yet they still behave worse than most of us would, even when we're not in front of the cameras the whole time. I mean, I've never thought to take a shit on someone's bed, for example. You know, unreal.
Listen, please get that conversation.
But this cameo role of Elon Musk's too is kind of amazing. I mean, he also then, into the mix, you throw the richest man in the world, and it's so weird. This Amber Heard, there must be something. Look, I've watched her a little bit. There's a little bit of that crazy hotness, which is just so unavoidable for some men. We're just drawn to it like magnets, you know. And that's a thing to acknowledge. It's not just her, it's us.
We kind of, there are a lot of people who kind of write off the idea that there is such a thing as pretty privilege. And what we're seeing with Amber is exactly that. I mean, she is she's so hot and just enough on the surface that you've got to scratch past the surface to actually get to the crazy. And that's what happens to all these guys, is initially at the face of it, at the confrontation and at the beginning, it's all just, you know, she's hot and she looks great, and when you're on dates and there are pictures and, you know, this Instagram live, and then
you take her home and then cameras, she takes a dump in your bed.
When the cameras are off, that's when the crazy comes, and then you're stuck in this. The crazy is you only see the crazy, right? You see the crazy at home. Everybody else sees the hotness. But you're like stuck.
But that also tells you that she's conscious of when to switch on the crazy and when not. So it's intentional. It's not by mistake, because she knows to behave herself a certain way in front of the cameras and when she's in public. But as soon as those doors close, then the bunny boiler comes out in her head. And that proves to you it's malicious, because she knows when to turn it on and off, and she knows what's socially acceptable and what isn't. But once the camera's on her, then she becomes very mean and very crazy and very dangerous all of a sudden. So it's intentional. I don't feel sorry for her. Let's see what happens. This thing's not finished yet, and we've obviously got a way to go still. But there we go. We've gone from the sublime to the ridiculous this morning. Serious things, stadiums that we'll never get money back on, to Amber Heard. We've got to come back in a second or two. Well, just a couple of seconds, for the burning platform, which I know everybody's excited about. This morning, we will be joined by Reyno De Beer, who's the president of the Liberty Fighters Network. And they are doing some pretty wild things in South Africa. We last spoke to him in 2000. So, sorry, 2020, not 2000.
2000.
Well, I mean, it feels like 12 years, but it's actually it's only 2020 that we last spoke to him, and we'll check in about what he's been doing and what he's been thinking since the lockdown ended, because that was obviously everybody's major preoccupation at that time, justifiably. We'll find out what his major preoccupation now is. All of that and more on the way next.
This week on the Auto Trader podcast.
Ferraris actually, no, they definitely first as contractors as well, because Charles has 71 points, which is more than Mercedes.
Well, I've just looked it up. So I mean, Sainz is not doing that badly.
Yeah.
Perez is also not doing that badly. But if I look at the last couple of races, both Sainz and Perez have been way off their teammates. Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
Just because it's about technology, connecting your business to the rest of the world doesn't mean you need to send rockets to space and use complicated solutions. Want to simplicate things? Well, join Jaco Voigt, who is the CEO of Catalytic, on the Unbundled podcast. With skin in the game and a keen focus on educating and assisting you and your business, Jaco decodes all the aspects of connectivity, security, and cloud solutions. Unbundled is brought to you by Catalytic, available on cliffcentral.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. All right. It is cliffcentral.com on a Thursday morning, which is the best time for you to catch up on all the things that are going on in the news. I am, as always, joined by my co-host for the Burning Platform, Phumi Mashiko. And we got lots to talk about today, Pums. There are plenty of things in the news. We'll talk to our guest in a moment, Reyno De Beer, who is from the Liberty Fighters Network. I'm excited to talk to him again and find out what their priorities are in 2022. We will also find out about what is going on with that, how much, the 22 million rand flag, which I saw JJ Tabane talking to Minister Natim Tetwa about yesterday, or someone sent me the clip. I don't even know when he did it. He might have done it on Monday. Did you watch this? I mean, did you see Natim Tetwa's answer is like, well, no, the reason that we are it's going to cost 22 million is because we've brought in the steel industry and they're building the construction. So JJ says to him, you mean the pole? He's like, yeah, but it's very important for the steel industry. So people are like, well, you're on mute, Pums. You want to build this thing and the steel industry want to be involved, but surely if the steel industry want to be involved, they would be paying for it themselves. Alas, it's 22 million rand for a flag. This is important.
Listen,
you know?
the issue of the flag is going to go on for a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that this thing was sewn up a year ago already. So this discussion is just yet one more distraction that's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to go anywhere. Yesterday, the thing I was wondering about, because a lot of people, I mean, the flag has been trending and a lot of people have been tagging at presidency. You know, Cyril does that. So, and yesterday I was wondering if whoever is monitoring that Twitter handle, do they go back? Do they have like a weekly session where they say, you know, Mr. President, these are the things that people are tweeting about, or daily, or whatever the frequency is? Is there someone monitoring that thing, and does he care?
No, I don't think he does. There's a picture on social media yesterday of him in a store buying balloons or something.
No.
In a tracksuit, and and there's a woman. No, there's a woman taking a picture of like Cyril in a tracksuit in the store buying balloons.
No,
I'm like, if this happened on a weekday where he's meant to be presidenting, I'm going to be annoyed because he's on our dime while he's out there.
Say it isn't so.
I promise you, I'll try and find the picture. It's outrageous.
So the presidency is not a weekday 9 to 5 job. It's
clearly
a 24/7 kind of job.
Well, clearly it's neither. Clearly it's neither of those, because he has time to go and buy balloons and mess around with, while the country really does require some serious leadership. But we've been down this road before, haven't we, Pumi?
But I think, look, and it's been, for me, it's also been quite fascinating to watch as the conversation is unfolding. You know, obviously Twitter is not everybody,
no,
but it's interesting to see how there are people who can justify this in their minds.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm also always fascinated to see how, as South Africans, we have, it seems like we don't have a capacity for complexity, or the appreciation of the complexity of all of the things that are happening. Without everything around us seems to be binary. It's either this or that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're not having the full breadth of all the conversations that we should be having, and all of the various implications. And it's either this or it's that. But not everything is binary.
No, but we, as you say, we don't seem to have the capacity for anything but that binary. Well, on that note, let's get Reyno De Beer on. We last spoke to Reyno in 2020 with the beginning of the lockdown, and he was, as many of us were, I think a lot of us who at that point thought that maybe the lockdowns were a terrible idea. Reyno had some very strong views at that point. It was the last time we had him on my TV show as well. And they're a group that is working to achieve the total liberation of South Africa, the peoples of which are still struggling for their dignity and genuine independence. So, I mean, it sounds like a big claim. But Reyno, just nice to see you, by the way. Remind us who the Liberty Fighters Network are, because it's been a long time since we spoke to you.
Thank you, Gareth, for inviting me back. Liberty Fighters Network is a voluntary association, not for gain. We're targeting civil, or we promoting civil liberties. We would like to transform the total legal system of South Africa, or would like to participate in that, in other words. And generally we watching the news, or the relevant news, and see where we can make a difference in general. So we've been challenging the national state of disaster relating to COVID-19 since the very beginning in May 2020. We've been through the entire court process, from the High Court to the Supreme Court of Appeal to the Constitutional Court, and subsequently we've during October last year 2021 we've in fact escalated a complaint relating to that to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. So we've taken it internationally. So the African Union is currently investigating the matter and considering it, and well, there's quite a lot of water that have flown into the sea since we've last spoken. I think it was about a year ago. And yes, thank you very much for inviting us again to inform the general public of what is happening.
I mean, Reyno, you know, some people would say that your manifesto that you just gave us a brief glimpse at, it sounds quite radical. I mean, to liberate South Africa and Africa, to overhaul the legal system. I mean, this is fighting talk. This is not like, you know, we just want to moderately do this or civil liberty that, or what you're saying is quite radical. Is that the response you get from people when you say this, or do they just not believe you?
No. In general, obviously, we've got quite a lot of supporters that's following us constantly, and all of them are on the same page. And it's not radical in the sense of we've seen through the national state of disaster of COVID-19 that our constitution is not protecting the man in the street as it's supposed to. And there's a specific section 36, the so-called limitation clause, that has become outrageous. And our courts have suddenly taken a stance of rather becoming an extension of government rather than looking after the people. And we've, because the Liberty Fighters Network were very radical in the sense that we were different than all the other challenges. All the other challenges utilized legal practitioners to assist them, and I was actually the one who was arguing our case all along in person, and I'm not a legal practitioner. So that has resulted in the fact that a lot of loopholes were identified in our legal system. We can say for sure now that the people who are supposed to be protected by the Constitution can't access the system if they don't have the luxury of affording an expensive legal team. And that's where we want to make a difference. Yes.
All right. So Reyno, I know Pumi's got lots and lots of questions here, but I do want to just establish who the Liberty Fighters Network are, which you've largely explained to us now. Where do you guys manage to get funding? Because all of this takes time and effort and energy, and you're up against some very crooked people sometimes who just seem to have unlimited resources. Are you taking donations from the public? You say you're a non-profit organization, but who's accountable for that money that does come in, or the money that's spent, and who exactly is the enemy in these situations? I mean, with respect to COVID-19, I'm largely on your side about how the state of disaster has gone on for far too long. It seems to be an excuse for a lot of really bad government behavior. We didn't know at the time that you started arguing these things that there was PPE being stolen to the tune of hundreds of millions of rands. We didn't know Zweli Mkhize's hand was in the pot. We didn't know a lot of these things. So obviously you've been proven right just by making a rough estimate about how, you know, the ANC's behaved in the past and how they'll continue to behave in the future. But tell us a little bit about your own structures and how that works. Does it mean you grabbing your bag in the morning and having to go and argue with people in court? Does it mean you go and protest outside the union buildings? How does it actually work?
We're working mostly on volunteers, and our system is basically I've been I'm the founder of the organization. We've established Liberty Fighters Network sometime in 2016 already, And we obviously have our executive system, and many of the people do it voluntarily, obviously. They give their own time. We don't have private funders. We don't have a large blue chip company who's putting in 100,000 grand or something to fund our operations. Mostly our overheads are not that expensive because of the fact that we are doing everything internally. And most of the cases are handled by myself. I've been in the activism industry, if one can mention that, for the past since 1994 already. So I've learned quite a lot of how to assist people legally. And even though I am not a qualified legal practitioner, we've got our experts that is volunteering, obviously, to assist people, especially with banking issues, securitization problems. Also, but most of our income, or all of it, is funded by just the general public who's donating 100 Rand and 50 Rand. So we don't have an excessive budget to fund us at all.
Well, Pums, do you want to start off maybe with, I mean, I could throw something in here. Just ask about the actual challenge. Yeah, go ahead.
And this is a general question around liberty fighters, because you talk about justice and access. And we know that one of the biggest problems we have in South Africa is our justice system is convoluted, it is long, it has many processes, and a lot of people in South Africa have low literacy, low education, definitely low funds. And so justice is denied them a lot of the time, not because they don't want it, simply because they cannot access it. And you talk about kind of the legal system being, and the players, the practitioners, the lawyers, being the problem in the system. Is that your enemy? Is that who you're fighting? Is that what you're trying to break?
I don't think there's enemies as such in the system. I think that we as people of South Africa, and our courts have totally forgotten that the courts are the courts of the people. They are serving, or they are supposed to serve the people of South Africa. And they are not simply doing it. For example, when one goes to the Equality Court is supposed to be the busiest courts in South Africa. It has been streamlined or designed in a way to be accessible to anyone without having or without being represented by legal representatives. They can access it themselves. But the government does not give that information to the people. We are, for example, of the view that one is actually supposed to learn basic law on school level, especially matriculants. When they go into the world after they've matriculated, they don't know anything about the law, and they are faced directly with the law each and every day. For example, labor relations. They don't know anything how to protect their labor rights. They don't know when they go and rent a flat for the first time what their rights are as a tenant. Etc., etc. So basic laws should be introduced instead of looking after how to have sex, for example, at school. Rather empower our youth to be legally trained, basically. But for the past, since 1994, that basic right has been declined by this government of ours. And we believe that when you look at, for example, all the departments all over South Africa in government, they are the director generals, or the heads of those departments are all legal practitioners, or 99% of them are. So they are legally trained. They know what they are doing, but they want to keep their wisdom for themselves.
The director
Yes.
generals.
They are legal practitioners. They are the heads of, and most of them are all legally trained. They're advocates and retired or non-practicing attorneys. Most of them, and they're not sharing their wisdom.
So to go back to Pumi's question, then, I mean, is the law profession itself part of the problem here? Because people go to university to study law because they know there's going to be work for them. I mean, we have way too many lawyers. If you ask me, I studied law myself, and it's not like a cabal. You don't get inducted into the secret society. But I do agree with you that there's a requirement on the.
It's called the bar.
Well, yeah. Yes, okay. You could argue that. I never got that far, but you could also argue that things have become, because people don't follow the rules and we don't have a good executive to implement and execute the law, that people have started to play with it. And that's exactly where the lawyers find their work, is where the areas of law are gray, or where someone might have or might not have broken the law. That's our own fault. We're not a very disciplined people in South Africa, and we've got undisciplined people at the top in politics, but we've also got undisciplined people in business. We've got people who don't drive according to the rules of the road. I'm one of them. You know, there are lots of people who break the rules, and that's where lawyers get their work.
My second question then is, Reyno, should your part of your fight then be around educating people? You know, because it's not in the interest of the government for people to know these things, but it is actually in all our interest and to all our benefit if more people understood how the law works and how the law is supposed to protect them, and more importantly, the Constitution, what rights they have and what responsibilities they have as citizens.
That's indeed so, Bumi. We've been tackling workshops to empower people, specifically surrounding basic laws. Liberty Fighters Network has actually been born out of the landlord-tenant industry. So we've been involved in opposing various eviction applications against occupiers. That is where we've made our name from the very beginning, to go out and assist people who really don't know the law. And then we come in, and when they are faced with evictions, we come in and assist them one-to-one. But the fact is that, yes, we believe the law profession is the problem. They are not our enemy. I think over the years, and when one looks at the history of the bar, for example, where they come from, it's a very religious type of organization. At the end of the day, they're very brotherly. It's a fraternity. It's a fraternity, and the problem is that when a matriculant wants to go and study law, he wants to do that because he wants to protect our Constitution, and it's very noble, the idea why he or she would like to go and study law. But the moment after that student have graduated and become a candidate attorney and become involved in the legal fraternity, they suddenly realize that their dream of being this noble constitutional fighter is down the dumps, because there's a certain practice that is being followed within the legal fraternity, and they literally have a hierarchy of this one is more senior than the other one. That is where the senior counsel, for example, comes from. And so we've seen it now. So sorry, Gareth, but during our course of our court challenge of the national disaster, we've seen And we've personally experienced it that a senior counsel has got such a power over a court that even the judges basically receive instructions from them to do a certain way or to rule in a certain way. So we really have a reformation needed in South Africa of our legal system, and not only a transformation.
Sure. I mean, this is going to sound slightly conspiratorial to a lot of people. You understand that, Reyno? I mean, it's bound to ruffle a few feathers, not only in the legal profession, but because that's just how things have worked, and people are really resistant to change. I just want to point out what Rusty says here. He says, that was a big red pill for me when I realized I could represent myself in court, as opposed to being told that you have to have counsel. Reyno is incredible. I mean, this is a fact. Our legal system was not built with the intention that it should be so difficult for ordinary people to have their day in court if they've got an issue of a civil or a criminal matter. But most of us are terrified of representing ourselves, and the lawyers themselves always say only a fool has themselves for a client. But in your case, I mean, how have these challenges in particular gone? And I don't want to spend the whole hour talking just about what you guys do at Liberty Fighters Network, though it is important. But how did these challenges go against government with regard to the state of disaster? Because it should have been over months ago. Why is it still going on? And what did you argue, and how did that go for you in court?
Well, when we last came to your show, Gareth, we did say that we are sure of the fact that the court order that we've got on the 2nd of June 2020 came fully operational on the 24th of June 2020, meaning that the Total Disaster Management Act regulations were null and void since that date. And we've founded our argument in that respect on an old, I think it was a 2007 Constitutional Court case. It's called the New Clicks case, whereby the Constitutional Court said and stipulated that when the court declares regulations as unconstitutional and invalid, the time period given, which was 20 days, I believe, in our respect, I can't remember. Sorry, it was quite a long time ago. But that period is not stopped when an appeal process starts. The court which granted the order was supposed to be amending or extending that period on its own by application of the government, which was never done. So hence we said that from the 24th of June, because of the fact, irrespective of the fact that the government appealed the process or the order, it came into operation. Numerous of legal experts agreed with us. Some of them are even professors at universities, but they didn't want to give their names for obvious reasons. And so when we eventually got to the Supreme Court of Appeal, which was an extremely controversial hearing, eventually the Supreme Court of Appeal did not mention the New Clicks case that we've argued anywhere. They've totally sidelined it and did not even say one thing about it, and they've simply dismissed.
Do you think that was a deliberate oversight, or do you think that was just a mistake?
It could not have been a mistake. We believe, and people can call us COVID-19 denialists, as the Supreme Court of Appeal have dealt us. But the fact of the matter is that no legal expert, and especially when you look at some of those Supreme Court of Appeal judges who sat on that matter on the bench, how they totally changed previous judgment they themselves made not a year or two before. They've totally changed it over. And why would they have had that opinion 2 years ago and suddenly now have something totally different. And then there was also a very controversial accusation laid against me in person by the Supreme Court of Appeal, where I was afterwards accused of contempt of court for an alleged accusation that I've made. And very strange about that, for example, is that in the very judgment that was handed down on the 2nd of July, the court said, or the Supreme Court of Appeal, for example, said that Justice Davis overstretched his powers by having attended to the then level 3 regulations, which were not in force on the day or by the time when our hearing was heard on the 28th of May 2020. So they themselves said that you cannot judge something that was not before court. And very interestingly, hypocritically, the Supreme Court of Appeal, in fact, judged me in the very judgment about something that happened after the 26th of May when the matter was heard before them. So they have overreached their own powers as well by having done that. So and when we've eventually escalated the issue to the Constitutional Court, we've set traps in our papers to ensure that that our case must be read. And the fact that the Constitutional Court dismissed our subsequent leave to appeal application there indicates that they have not even read our papers, because if they had, they would have seen what we've put in there, and they did not do that. So
right.
Is the flaw then not also the humans in the system? You know, because there's an expectation that the judge has got to read and understand and agree or be persuaded to agree with a particular point of view. And the flaw in the system is that these individuals are also humans with their own ideas and feelings, and that's what they bring to bear. It's not just about the legal frameworks. It's not always just about the legal benchmarks. Sometimes what also comes into play is the feelings of the human.
Oh, definitely, Pumi. Pumi, sorry. Sorry. Pumi, yes, that is a major issue, the people, because we are also saying that we don't believe, and this is our right, constitutional right to believe that. We don't believe that a judge can become a judge if he or she cannot be compromised in one or other way. The reason for that is that judges are working with security issues, countrywide security issues. So at some stages, they are obliged by their office to do something sometimes which they themselves don't like, but they are obliged to keep peace. They must order or rule in a certain way. That is what we believe have happened in our matter when we've challenged the national state of disaster. I truly believe that the judges were put in a position whereby they said, you know what, in law, your arguments might have been right, but unfortunately, we need to follow a COVID-19 international narrative for some or other reason. We still don't know what it is. We hope that it is to protect our lives. And at the end of the day, the problem is that when those judgments comes out, in future, when you're not in that security position anymore, those judgments are valid to influence future judgments. And so, that is the major issue.
Yeah,
I want to move to something else, Gareth. I really want to move to something else, and I think this is a perfect place to move to that, because it's also what we are seeing with Jacob Zuma and his multiple kind of appeals and dismissals and what we as the public are looking at and saying, geez, this guy, he just doesn't want to have his day in court. But the reality of it is that for the judge, and this is what Judge Kuhn said on Tuesday, is that he has to, in order for justice to properly be served, he has to be allowed in front of his peers, as it were, but also the legal leeway to appeal where he wants to appeal and to stand up and say, yes, this is wrong, that I can't do, until he has exhausted that entire process and it has been followed within a process and a framework. If that is rushed through, no matter what you and I believe, no matter what the majority of the country believes, in order for there to be some semblance of law and order, this has to be a process that is followed through to the, and
degree. Right.
I think that you're
100% correct. But at the end of the day, we have a major issue again with our constitution. Let me just say this. I've mentioned the problem with section 36 of our constitution already. And then there's another problem with our constitution, section 173, which basically says that the courts or the high courts may regulate their own processes. And they interpret it as that they are allowed by law to change the law as well. And that is the major issue that we have seen, that the courts have become, in the one instance, they are supposed to protect the constitution and they need to serve the people. But on the other hand, they literally have this this method of totally ignoring laws as well and procedures. The issue surrounding Mr. Jacob Zuma is very controversial, and we will have a whole week to talk about it. But that was the problem in the Constitutional Court when he was sent to jail. He did not have his day in court. Yep. He was literally, if the National Prosecuting Authority would have, as they are going to do with me now, after the Supreme Court of Appeal have subsequently reported me to the National Prosecuting Authority, and that criminal case against me for contempt of court would start any day. He had the right to go through the same process as I am going to go through. Right. There's a trial process. You've got the right to call evidence or submit evidence and call.
I think, Pumi, sorry to interrupt you, Reyno, but there are a couple of things I want your opinion on too, and Pumi's. I think there's also an interesting thing here. The public, the way we ordinary people, and even though you're not a lawyer either, I mean, you quote sections of the Constitution like you've been practicing law for years. It's funny that the ordinary people look at the Jacob Zuma case and they don't see a citizen exhausting all their legal options. What they see is someone who's trying to, largely depends. I mean, there are some Zuma supporters who do see it that way. But most people in this country see it as someone trying to sidestep the law and someone abusing the legal process in order to get themselves exonerated or at least to delay things forever. But let's just look at a couple of other things that are going on at the moment. I want to ask you guys about this. It's a headline I saw in News 24 yesterday. They say 3,570 prisoners have escaped in the last 5 years from our prisons. That's what Bakh'abantu announced in a question that was asked in Parliament by the DA. That's a lot of people. 3,570 prisoners in the last 5 years. They are out among us. I mean, many of them may be in politics for all we know. This shows you that even when the legal system works and someone is sentenced, I mean, 3,570 people escaping from prison in the last 5 years is a lot, isn't it?
That is totally ridiculous. Yes. The problem is that we've got so many ministries at this stage. Now, for example, the Minister of Justice is also supposed to be the Minister of Correctional Services, but he is also handling the Department of Constitutional Development as well, and but that is not part of his naming, and so I honestly don't know whether the ministers in fact know what duties they have because of all these, and how they are supposed to actually link into one another to reach a certain goal at the end of the day. The police used to look after, or there used to be a separate minister for correctional services for many years, and for some reason it was just joined. We still don't know why it was joined with the Department of Justice, because justice in itself is supposed to be a separate ministry as well. So we are sitting with a government that don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, what also, you say, go ahead, Pumps.
Earlier we were speaking about this, where what we don't seem to understand, and definitely government doesn't understand, is how complex the system is. There are so many interdependencies and such complexity within the system, and one cog absolutely turns another. And one of the things that we see, the collapse. So we see. It's like little fires everywhere, right? Is in one department, there's a particular implosion and a collapse, and it's not immediately clear how that impacts another one and a different one. Because what you're talking about when you talk about these prisoners that escaped, there are a couple of things there, right? There are way too many and too long a waiting period from when a person is charged and arrested, and when they eventually show up to court. We see it in the number of awaiting trial prisoners, right? Then there is a total collapse in terms of what happens when those people are in the remand of the state, and how they are then kept overcrowded prisons. Then it is the showing up to court, and the NPA showing up on the day and having all of the files, and the police showing up with all of those things are an intricate system that has interdependencies, and everyone's working in a silo. And then there's the issue of Begitele's ministry and his utter incompetence. And the fact that there is such lawlessness and there is no policing. In order for a state and for the justice system to function, really, the police are an integral part of keeping that peace, right? They're an integral part of keeping that peace, because there has got to be a level of fear that the police are the violence that the state can exert on people in order to keep them in line.
Spot on. And as Reyno says, it's from the top, because if we don't even have the structures in place and we don't know how the system is meant to work, and really it seems that the president of the country really just uses cabinet positions as a way to placate people inside the ANC and to give them sheltered employment. It's not really about committing themselves to executing the functions of those particular departments. And as Pumi says, these have very separate responsibilities, and they need to be delineated. I don't know that anyone at the moment is even paying attention to these things, but when we've got an extra 3,500 odd people running around who have been sentenced, probably for some quite terrible things in some of those cases, that doesn't make South Africa a better place for any of us. And I thought it was an interesting story, because it just kind of, went under the radar. South Africa gets upset about a 22 million rand flag, but what do we think about Naledi Pandor giving some 50 million to Cuba? What do we think of that? Why is there no outrage about that by comparison with the flag, which is half the money, and it's something we at least get to keep? The other 50 million is going to Cuba. What do we say about that?
Well, if I can give my 2 cents on that, is that the problem is that South Africans have become used to chaos. And the moment when anyone who decides that, no, this cannot go on any longer, starts to oppose that, they are then at the end of the day seen as the disturbers of peace.
Yes.
So we have a total our traditions in our families and in our cultures have disappeared. We for example, take apartheid as the worst system ever, possibly. But the reality is that when we look at how the apartheid government used to function, when there was a minister, that minister or minister of health, that minister was a doctor. When you had a minister of justice, that minister was actually supposed to be a legal practitioner. When we had, for example, a minister of police, that minister used to be a police officer himself. And
Well,
now we're looking at Becky Kennedy, for example.
In some, not all cases, but I think, the minute we take the worst system and we compare it to the best, we're not really saying much about ourselves, are we?
We're not. But the fact of the matter is that when I'm just of the view, and this is my freedom of opinion, that when the apartheid citizens decided to get rid of apartheid, we all thought that we're going to keep the system that's there, but include all others in that system that relatively worked. But when we came in the new democratic South Africa, everything changed. For example, the police force, they got rid of the narcotics bureau, they got rid of the child protection unit, they got rid of a murder and robbery squad. All those expert units have been disbanded by the new government. And now today we've got a major problem with child and human trafficking. We've got a major problem with drugs. We've got an absolute
how does this relate to my question around the money that's gone to Cuba? Because Carl says here, I don't know if this is right, it says not 50 million, it's 350 million, and it just came out this week. So my question isn't even about the government. We know they're going to spend money on the wrong things. My question to you and Pumi, Reyno, is why is it that South Africans, we've got to take some responsibility for this? We're outraged by the 22 million rand flag, but you don't see nearly as much outrage about the money that's going to Cuba. Why is that? And why is it that we put people in jail on a similar kind of, by metaphorical comparison, we'll put someone in jail for, stealing for shoplifting from clicks, but we won't go after the person who's pilfered 150 million from the state coffers. Why do we choose to get upset by certain things and not others?
Gareth, as I've said, that our society have become used to chaos. We know that our whole system is not functioning, and Casper de Vries once said that you cannot make a joke out of a positive thing. That is why our people are such humorous people. We're always laughing, and or most of us at least.
We are.
And because it's a joke, and you cannot make a joke out of a positive thing, actually. And so when we are set in this position, like for example, we've spoken about Mr. Jacob Zuma. When he made the change to appoint Mr. Van Rooyen as the new finance minister, and that was the pivotal point when everything went haywire for him as well. But people have, at that point, they have forgotten that Pravin Gordhan was the most evil person, according to news, at that stage. But he was, the fact that Jacob Zuma did that became the more comfortable position for us to say that, now we don't hate Pravin Gordhan anymore. Now we hate Jacob Zuma. And that was the downhill for him after that. And that is how we just as a society operates. We like to have sensation. We would like to rather implode a story about a student in Cape Town who was racist, but we forget about the situation of the fellows. When you go to a retailer, you don't see racism. We love.
No.
We
I
know.
We're getting a little lost here. Can I just point out?
Gareth, can I say?
Of course, Pums.
Can I say this?
I'll bring it afterwards.
You know, the thing about the money going to Cuba, or the money that has gone to Cuba, and the loans and the donations and all of this, and why one of the reasons why South Africa has these outbursts, or South Africans have these outbursts of outrage, is also it's also a function of information leaks, as it were. It is simply what is available to the people at the time that it is available. I said to you earlier that I think a lot of it is distractions, right? So when we talk about and this unfortunately is also what happens in the information age that we are in. Pieces of information are revealed to people as and when, and in a point of view that is made to skew how people feel and understand, right? So I think it was Carl dos Santos is the one talking about that it's actually not 50 million but 350, and how it came out this week, right? So in actual fact, this is information and news that has been coming out in drips and drabs over the past couple of months, whether it is the Deputy Minister of DIRCO talking about, and this money was also, given in tranches starting in 2018, was money that was loaned to Cuba. And this week, when the Deputy Minister in the plenary session came out to say, the first tranche, which was, I think, 147 million, which was made available to Cuba in 2018, has been paid back by Cuba with interest, right? So then you're just like, oh, so there was a loan in 2018 and they've paid it back. The second tranche, which was, I think, another 83 million, was made available, just as when the bank says to you, we're making this money available to you in 2021, and that Cuba has started repaying. When you hear that, and you hear it, so then it happens in a plenary session in some side office in Parliament, and nobody says anything about it. It just passes like a fart in the night. And then 6 months down the line, the DA issues a statement that says, "Oh, we've just discovered that this thing happened." And then
I think that's kind of where I was headed. I didn't have.
We're manufacturing this outrage. It's the same as the 22 million rand flag, right? So
we're being manipulated by the media largely.
Well, not just the media. It's not just the media. Because again, this is information that is circulating in Parliament. These questions are being asked by various people, various parties who are all there in Parliament, right? And as and when they need to manufacture this kind of outrage, or they need to win points, then this information is suddenly widely available. And then because we've juniorized, I think, that the newsrooms are so juniorized, and they're all chasing the kind of breaking a news story, that there is not enough time spent on the research that says, okay, so if the DA sends out a press release that says they have discovered that this amount of money has been given to Cuba, has this amount of money been given? How did the DA discover this? At which point was that, there are so many questions that need to be asked that suddenly make a story a non-story.
Reyno, you wanted to say something?
Yes. This actually reminds me, Pumi, you on the dot. Because when the national state of disaster for COVID-19 was declared on the 15th of March 2020, all 14 political parties in government agreed that it had to have happened. And subsequently, for example, the Freedom Front Plus had a court case, a review application to court, where they requested the evidence surrounding the declaration of the national state of disaster from government. And we then said, but why are you asking that information? Because that very information should have been with you when you agreed that government had to declare a national state of disaster. So where were you during that decision making? It's the problem. If we would like to do something about what is currently happening, we must stop blaming the ANC. We must blame all 14 political parties currently in government, because all of them have failed us up to this point. We basically need a new broom and to sweep everything clean. We are so played, and I will, if they have agreed on the 15th of March 2022, the national state of disaster, and afterwards all of them suddenly started to say that no, we national state of disaster uplifted. Do it the very first instance.
Yeah, no, they've wasted their own opportunity here. So, I just want to stop you. I want to go back to something you said.
We definitely played. Money is being involved.
Yeah. Reyno, I just want to refer to something you said earlier about like the whole Jacob Zuma era and that Des van Rooyen episode, and how deftly Pravin Gordhan managed to step out of the way, despite having no constituency of his own. I mean, if he had to stand for election, I don't think he'd get more than 20 votes from people. But he's been a part of virtually every administration since, I think, Thabo Mbeki took over. And he's managed to never get the blame. In fact, he gets quite a lot of shine from people because he ran SARS well. And, you know, he seems to be an efficient administrator. And certainly he's a capable person who gets things done. But he may have worse policies and worse ideas in mind than Jacob Zuma did. And we turn all our ire against Jacob Zuma. Again, for me, it's a kind of manipulation, and we're being played. Sometimes we don't even see the wood for the trees. I'm asking these questions not because I don't want, to talk about other things, but because I think this is something we can look at ourselves for. We can start to be better at this than the people who've been played in every occasion that you two have mentioned.
If there is anything that we should be doing, is we should spend a little bit more time remembering the things that are out there. One of the things that South Africans have, I think we all fall into this trap every now and again, is we have a very short memory. You talk about Pravin Gordhan and how long he's been in politics, and how long he's been in every administration. And what is it that he has done? Because we've got such a short memory or attention span. I don't know if it's memory or attention span, because there's always so much chaos happening around us all the time. Is we tend to fall into these traps of things happening in spurts, right? So right now we're all outraged at Zweli Mkhize, we're outraged at Zweli Mkhize and his child's goat's Louis Vuitton scarf. but nobody kind of looks at the big picture that says, yeah, but this guy, even when he was the treasurer general of the party, the finances of the party, so he couldn't look after just the party, right? We're so outraged today because of a flag. And we've forgotten that, oh my God, not so long ago, there were issues around statues and all of that. We get so outraged about money going to Cuba, and it's all in spurts because we are not looking at the whole picture, and nor are we looking at the whole picture over a period of time. We keep telling ourselves that the problem is Jacob Zuma, the problem is Thabo Mbeki, the problem is Ace Makhashule. The news is the problem is the party. Everybody in the party, right? Is it parliament? Reyno, you talk about the fact that everybody votes on this thing, right? The problem is not just the ANC. The problem is that we have got people in parliament who are supposed to be holding the ANC to account, but when it suits them, they sit on the same side of the bench as the ANC. So the problem is the system and the people in the system, and that's what we have to look at in the long term, not just for the issue of the day.
I think that's a great place to end the discussion. I do want to give Reyno a chance just quickly to mention how people can get in touch with the Liberty Fighters Network, how they might want to be able to volunteer themselves, perhaps make a donation, because they seem to be doing work on behalf of the people. And certainly we need more civil society initiatives like that. Reyno, do you want to go ahead and just give people the details?
Mm.
Can you hear and see us, Reyno?
The internet today has been messing us up left, right, and center. Now Reyno's going to miss his big ad opportunity. This is like the ad break, Reyno.
Well, I'll give you the details since Reyno's internet is frozen there. Sorry about that. libertyfighters.co.za. That's one word. libertyfighters.co.za. You can get hold of Reyno and his team.
Is it Liberty Fighters, not Liberty Fighters Network? Oh, Liberty Fighters. Okay.
libertyfighters.co.za. Yeah.
Okay.
And you can find out more about what they do there. They're also fighting against new health regulations, which they say are contestable before court. They continue to fight at the AU, as he already mentioned. And if you're interested in what they do, you can find out more from Reyno and his team, libertyfighters.co.za. And to everybody who's been part of the conversation this morning on the Burning Platform, awesome. Thank you. We will see you next week for more of this. Have a very good Thursday. Cheers, everybody.